Hello and welcome, my partners in crime, and as always I say that in the nicest possible way. Thank you for joining me again today. Now today's case is an unsolved case, still unsolved. Probably one of the most famous unsolved cases I think in American history, probably even in the world actually. This case is so well known. And this is the Elizabeth Shaw case, the Black Dahlia case as it is known. Very interesting case, and this is the first case that I'm going to do on my members part. So hello members, if you're watching this, you have paid your $4.99 and this is the first case that I'm ever going to do on here. So maybe you should remember that for a draw at some point in one of the months to come. So anyway, the Black Dahlia case, Elizabeth Shaw, a beautiful looking woman, really beautiful looking woman. And her murder, I think, yes, it is unsolved. There are many suspects in this case, without a doubt. So let's get on to why it's still unsolved and probably would never now be solved, ever. So Elizabeth was born on July the 29th, 1924, and she died on January the 15th, 1947. So it's a very old case. But it's such an interesting case, really. I had to do it. Now the reason she was called the Black Dahlia was, I think at the time when she was found, she was wearing a sheer black top and a black skirt, or that was what she was meant to be. And the press at that stage, I think, and still today, we love to give killers, don't we, or victims names. And I think with this woman, there was also a Blue Dahlia movie out around this time, and so the press named her that. That's why it's called the Black Dahlia murders, or murder of Elizabeth Shaw. Now she was an American woman and she was found murdered in Latimer Park in the neighbourhood of Los Angeles, California. Now her crime really became so highly publicised, and really it's because of the graphic nature of the way that she was murdered. Her corpse had been mutilated, and also she'd been cut in half at the waist. Now there wasn't much blood, or any blood actually. The body had been drained of blood, and that's what made her look, plus because she was dead, but it made her look so pale as well when the person found her. Now she was found in this field, and as I said, no blood at all. So obviously now we know that she wasn't murdered there. She wasn't mutilated or tortured, as some people have said. It's not a controversy about what it was, whether she was tortured before, whether she had cigarette burns on her, whether, some have said that she had faeces that was found in her stomach content. That is untrue actually. In the autopsy report there is no sign of her being made to eat faeces, or also even being burnt by cigarettes. I think that they know that the way the body and the lack of bruising on the body of where she was actually cut in half, and I think her breast manipulated, and large parts of her skin was removed and stuff. That was done after she had been murdered. To her also, she had been raped, and she had been anally raped as well. And again, when they tested for, we're talking about 1947 here. And so when she was, when the autopsy was done, they couldn't find any semen or anything at that point in there. The body was also washed in gasoline. Now, when you think of a body being washed in gasoline to get rid of any evidence from a body, even in 1947, now you could understand people trying to get rid of DNA evidence, they're washing the bodies, they're doing this sort of stuff. In 1947, when all the reliance was on was fingerprints, really, this person knew what he was doing, without a doubt. And so that's really how she died. But she didn't die there. She was moved there after death. Now her body was placed in such a way that it was posed. The top half of her body was posed with her hands behind her head. Her face, her mouth had been cut from either side to ear as well. So it made her look like she was smiling, but like we look at the Joker now in the Batman movies, that sort of look is what she had, and that was the top half of her body. Also, again, she had been mutilated on her breasts and her arms and stuff. Skin, deep, really, wounds were present there. The bottom of her part of her body was quite a way away, you know, a big distance, couple of metres distance away. And as the cut on this part of the body was clean cut. She was literally cut in half, quite professionally, really. So it gives you some insight. Now, we could be talking about a doctor, couldn't we? We could be talking about a surgeon, and there was, police had looked into local colleges and medical students and everything else at this point. Or it could have been someone that worked with animals, it could have been anything, or it could have been someone that just had an interest in cutting up bodies. And I think this is what makes this case difficult, because yes, there was a torso murder going about at the same time, but not the same. The MO wasn't really the same. Similar, but not the same. Now, it was commonly held that Elizabeth was this aspiring actress. There's nothing really to back that up. Yes, I think she may have wanted to be an actress. A lot of people in 1947 wanted to be an actress, and she had moved to California and Florida and different places like that, but that was due to her ill health. That actually wasn't due to her wanting to aspire to be an actress. She was a waitress at the time of her murder, as many up and coming actresses were in them days, but she had no acting credits to her name at all. So I think this press had pushed this to the public, that she was this aspiring actress and stuff like this, and listen, she may have been, but not in the way what they was trying to portray her. She was a waitress. She was struggling to get by. She was a very slim girl, and you can tell that by the autopsy, but the autopsy also states that her teeth were very bad, meaning she wasn't eating well, she wasn't looking after herself. If you was an aspiring actress, you would have done more than that. Yes, she was very pretty, but I think she just lived her life, and because I think she had kidney issues or lung issues, that she had quite ill health, and that could have also been the deterioration of her teeth, because I know she had an operation when she was about 15. So there was lots of things in the press about this murder and about this girl that wasn't true, and so you have to sift through all this stuff to try and get to the truth. Now, if she was an aspiring actress, then you'd be also looking, wouldn't you, at perpetrators within that industry, but she had no credits to her name. She didn't go to any auditions. She hadn't been. So you can sort of take that out of the equation with Elizabeth Shaw. So this Black Dahlia, this nickname that the press had give her, I think there was an owner of this drugstore in Long Beach, California, and he said that he had told some reporters that a male customer had come in, and that he had started calling her the Black Dahlia. So we don't know, do we, if he had anything to do with that. They never found that particular customer that came in. So that's, when you start thinking, if it wasn't the press give her the name then, because of what she was wearing, and it was someone that just walked into a drugstore and started talking about this murder and what she was wearing and why he had called her the Black Dahlia, I think, they should have looked for that person and questioned that person, because even killers like to give their victims nicknames. Now, this killer, whoever he was really in the press's ear. I think, all killers love that, where they, the fame, their 15 minutes of fame. And I think with this killer, I don't know if he would have definitely killed before. I think for this killer, this was his prime kill. This was the best it's going to get for him. Definitely. Because there wasn't nothing like it after that. This person took their time to kill this young girl. Enjoyed the kill. and he could have been the one that gave her the name that is then stuck. We just don't know. Another theory to add to the rest of it. So when this girl's body was found, Elizabeth Schultz's body was found, she was found by a woman walking her young daughter, and the woman actually thought she was a mannequin, because I think of the way it was posed, the body was posed, but also because the separation of the body from the top torso part to the bottom was at separate places. And it wasn't until she got that close that she realised then that it wasn't a mannequin, it was actual body. So the police started their investigations, and it was the Los Angeles Police Department. Extensive, really, it was extensive, and it produced over about 150 suspects. But again, there was all of this research, all of this looking into this case, this investigation of 150 people that could have done this murder. There was no evidence, and it yielded nothing. There was nothing that came from it. So Elizabeth Schultz's unsolved murder and the details around it has been really, it's got this cult going, hasn't it? You know, we've had copycat killers since then, or people trying to say it's copycat killers since then. And there's so many theories and speculations, it's very hard, as I said earlier, to get around this case. So there's been many books on this case, and I think when you have an unsolved crime like this, where the press and the media have made her out to be something other than a victim, because she was a victim, and I think the press built this up and built this up, and really then hindered, I think, the case. Because then you had people coming forward saying they've done it because everyone wants their 15 minutes of fame. Now, some of these people actually that have come forward over the years and said that they had murdered Elizabeth Schultz weren't even born at the time of this death, but they still come forward. So over the years, the press have, I think, hindered this case right from the early days. They made, I think it was 30 or 40 days of bombardment in the press of Elizabeth Schultz. She was this, she was that, you know. They didn't know, did they? This girl went missing for a few days before she was murdered. It really hindered this case. Plus then you had the press being wrote to by the potential killer of this girl, explaining the kill, explaining about different things that sometimes only the killer would know. And killers are well known to do this, to write to the press, to want to be known, to taunt the police, you know, to really taunt them. And this then was then published in the press. But what wasn't really released to the press early was about the gasoline, how the body was washed in gasoline to get rid of any evidence. But the letters that were sent to the press at that point were also wiped with gasoline to take fingerprints off them. Now there were some left, actually didn't do that great of a job. But I think when they were then sent for analysis, they were then damaged or couldn't be used for certain reasons. So this killer, and this is why I come back to this killer constantly, this man knew about detection even then. Was he a police officer? Did he know, you know, one, about how to dispose of a body, how to kill? Because I think with Elizabeth, she had a bang on her head. The skull wasn't cracked or anything like that, but enough to incapacitate her. So we knew she was probably hit on the back of the head, something taken somewhere, you know, terribly killed, raped, murdered, dismembered. And you know, I don't think there was torture, but that was enough anyway. And then I think we have an eyewitness that saw a car around the dump site on that day, and he had pulled up to dump some grass clippings on the grass there, and there was a car, and the man from that car got out and looked into his window, then got in and drove away. Now they think that's the killer, actually, a single person in this car and that was the point when that body was dumped. But again, to find that car, to find anybody, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. Lots of people have come forward over the years saying potential suspects in this case. I mean, Elizabeth Shaw had boyfriends. She did see people. I mean, at some points they've said, I think one of her friends that was a prostitute at the time had said that she wasn't a prostitute at all. Actually, far removed from that, was that she would see men, but then she would just taunt them with it. She wouldn't actually, you know, she'd pretend that she's going to sleep with them and this, that and the other, but she wouldn't do it. So then there was the theories that she was gay and something else. But sometimes, you see, with these perpetrators, it couldn't have been, it may not have been any of that. It may have been Elizabeth Shaw was in the wrong place at the wrong time and come across a killer, really, that she either knew or didn't know. But, or she may have taunted him, you know, put it out there that she was going to sleep with him and then said no. Or it could have been someone she really didn't know at all. Or he knew her and she didn't know him. As I said, she was a very attractive girl. And we talk about stalkers, don't we, now? Stalkers were around in them days. We just didn't know what to call them in them days. We just didn't. So I think when we look at Elizabeth Schultz's background, now she was born on, as I said, on the 29th of July 1924 in Hyde Park section of Boston, Massachusetts. And she was the third of 5 daughters to Cleo and Phoebe May Schultz. Now, around 1927, the Schultz family relocated to Portland in Maine before setting up in Medford in Massachusetts, and this is a Boston suburb, I think, in the same year. Now, Wyatt Shaw was raised most of her life there. Schultz's father, I think he used to build like mini golf courses and stuff. Now, don't forget, in 1929 or 1920s, we had the stock market crash, so lots of people lost their money. So this girl went from having a decent lifestyle with her mother and her father, living in this property with her sisters, and having fun and living her life, unwell at some points, and we'll go into that in a minute. But then when the father was making all these mini golf courses and times were good and money was flowing, when the crash happened, everyone lost their jobs, or their money, or their income, their lifestyle. And that's what happened here with the Schultz family. And I think even if you'd had savings in them days, you'd have lost them, and many people did. You had people, I think, jumping off of buildings in the 1920s in this financial crash what happened in America. And the Schultz family were really now broke. They had nothing. So in 1930, I think the father's car was found abandoned in Charlestown Bridge. And it was assumed that he had then jumped off the bridge and committed suicide. So, and that was in the Charles River, they was meant to have done that. So, of course, believing that her husband was dead, you had the, Schultz's mother moved her 5 children and her to a small apartment in Medford. Now, Schultz's mother worked as a bookkeeper. So, as I said, she came from a good background. There was no issues of her childhood, apart she did suffer with bronchitis, and she also suffered with asthma attacks, and she underwent then lung surgery at the age of 15. And this is why now she had moved now from her hometown, away from her mother. Her mother sent her away because they said the cold was no good for her. So in Massachusetts, the cold was no good. So she went to stay with family, I think, then in Florida, and she spent a lot of time in Florida with her family because of her ill health, and it was better for her in Florida with the asthma and the bronchitis. And then she would come back into the summer months to see her family. They had a very good family, apart from that everyone thought that the father had committed suicide, as many did in the 1920s financial crash. That's what a lot of people did. So yeah, so she spent a lot of time anyway during them 3 years in the winter months in Miami, Florida, and then with her family and friends. Split her time up for ill health, not because she was an aspiring actress. that wasn't the part of it. So during the next 3 years, you know, during this Florida month she spent in Milford with her sisters, and she dropped out of high school at the same time as well. I think she went to Milford High School. So she was changing. Okay, she'd been away from home, and if you go away from home at 15, you have to grow up quite quick, whether you're living with friends or family or what you're living with. You then grow up quite quickly. And then she then came back and decided that high school then was no longer for her. And then out of the blue, in 1942, Schultz's mother received a letter of apology from her presumed deceased husband. Remember, because they meant to have jumped off the bridge and killed himself because of the crash. No, he hadn't. He'd revealed that he was alive, living well, and he started a new life in California. And that's why Elizabeth Schultz went to California. So, in December, at the age of 18, Schultz relocated to live with her father, whom she hadn't seen and had presumed dead for 6 years. But she went. One, because I think she felt, well, one for their good health, because she was still needed the fresh air in California. I mean, let's all admit it. Beautiful weather, it's a beautiful place to live. And so she thought, well, it's my father, I'm going to go there. Well, it didn't really work out. There was lots of arguments there. She didn't really know this man, and to tell the truth, any man that is going to say to his wife and children, or anyone, you know, to pretend to kill themselves and go and set a new life up in a different state. You know, there was something really wrong with that man, and I think it showed in here. And also, you know, I don't know really what went on in that relationship, but after she moved out there, she didn't really see him again after that, because I don't think she really knew him. Who did? Did even the wife know him? Had 5 kids by the man, then he goes and pretends to jump off a bridge and leaves you to bring up these kids on your own because he's stressed. Anyway, that's what happened with Elizabeth Schultz's father. So that was about 1943 when she left him. And then I think she took a job at a base exchange camp in Cook. Now we're bringing into a lot of the Air Force bases here. We're coming into Air Force, we're coming into Army stuff, because this is where she found work, and that she sort of mixed with a lot of Army people. Now, lots of people in the Army travel, you know, we have a lot of people on these bases that come from different countries. So this again can't be ruled out if any of these are suspects or what should have been suspects in this murder. But she did work there briefly, and she had several friends, and I think she then had a relationship, the first relationship she was with this Army Air Force sergeant, and he was known to abuse her, so she left that. Then in 1943, again, she moved to Santa Barbara, where she was arrested on September the 23rd, 1943, for underage drinking in a bar. Now, she was 18. Now, in this country, in England, we can drink at 18. In America, you can't, still to this day, and that's why I didn't take Taylor to New York until she was 21, because I wanted to actually take her into a bar. That was the law even then. At 21, you can't drink in America until you're 21. And so she was then arrested in a local bar for underage drinking. And this is where the mug shots come from. The photographs that you see about mainly about Elizabeth Schultz's photograph is the mug shot taken at that point, the front view and the side view of her, plus her fingerprints were taken at that time, and the FBI had them on file. And I think this is how also that she was identified so quickly, because her fingerprints were on them files. I think they had over there about 130,000 at the time, different fingerprints and stuff, and Elizabeth Schultz was one of them, and it was only because of that how she was identified that early. And I think this is the only thing that the FBI really had in this investigation, because this is done by the California police investigation, and the FBI didn't have really much to do with this. They may have assisted in different things with it, but the actual investigation was done by the California police. But the mugshot and the fingerprints of her were obtained from this time, or else it would have been even a long time to identify this body if it wasn't for the FBI having these on file. So because she was a juvenile at 18 in America, and you are a juvenile, she was then sent back by the authorities back to Medford. Not that she stayed. She didn't, by this time, she had way outgrown there, and she loved the lifestyle in Florida, and then occasionally she would pop back then to Massachusetts to see her family. But while in Florida, she met a Major Matthew Michael Gordon Jr. Now, he was a decorated, again, Army Air Force officer on the 2nd Commando Group. Now, he was training, and he was, I think, for deployment then to China and Burma, India, and the theatre of operations, I think it is, in World War II. So this is a very long time ago. Now, Schultz had told friends, Elizabeth had told friends, that Gordon had written and proposed marriage to her, and she seemed to really like him, and he seemed to really like her. Unfortunately, you know, things didn't work out, and again he was killed in a plane crash in India, and that was it. That relationship was over, and it was after that then that she moved to California. So then she returned in 1946 to Los Angeles to visit an Army Air Force Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Flickering, of whom she had known from Florida. So she had a lot of connections now, as I keep saying, with Air Force and different bases and stuff. Now, he was stationed, I think, at Naval Reserve Air Force Base in Long Beach. And I think she spent 6 months there with him. And I don't know if there was a relationship or such, or they were just really good friends, but that's where she stayed with him. So shortly before her death, she had become working as this waitress. Now, again, nowhere in her history does it say that she is or has been an up-and-coming actress. She has been to no auditions, she's been to nothing. Nothing. She has moved around purely because of ill health, and then because actually she liked living in Florida and California. And she had worked on Air Force bases, and it made it easy then for her to get jobs. There is no actress here in this at all. That's a myth made up by the press. So she got this waitress job, and then she had rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub in Hollywood Boulevard. And that's where she lived at the time of their disappearance. So on about the 9th of January in 1947, Elizabeth returned to her home in Los Angeles after a brief trip to San Diego with a bloke called Robert, or Red Manley, a 25-year-old married salesman who she'd been dating. So she was dating different people, and this man was married. Again, you know, another suspect on there. Now, he stated that he dropped her off at the Biltmore Hotel, I think, in downtown Los Angeles, because that's where she was going to meet her sister, who had come in visiting from Boston that afternoon. So the staff at the hotel do remember her making a phone call and then going into the bar, into the cocktail bar, or the cocktail lounge. And then I don't think after that she was really seen again. That was really it. That was it. The last few sightings. A lot of people have said after they see her in different things, but there's no, you can't establish that. There's no way that you can corroborate that. And a lot of people, I said, come forward with lots of information, even about murdering her in this case with their 15 minutes of fame. But that was the last known sighting of Elizabeth Schultz on that day. And then on the 15th, she was found, wasn't she? Her body then was found naked, found 7 in 2 pieces on this vacant lot on this, I think, west side of South Norton Avenue, midway between, well, within this park anyway area. Now, the neighbourhood was mainly undeveloped at the time. It isn't like that now, but in 1947, a lot of Los Angeles was undeveloped, and this was quite an undeveloped area. So it's a good place to dump a body, but you'd probably have to know this sort of area, really. So I would assume by this case that the person would have definitely, I don't think this was a passer-by or passing through the state. I think this person who killed her, come from that state, knew this area well. So I think the coroner said, or the medical examiner determined, that she had been dead for around 10 hours prior to the discovery of her body at the time. And I think they said that it was either on the evening of the 14th or the morning of the 15th of January 1947. So it had been washed, as I said, by this killer, and it had also been washed in this, gasoline to get rid of any stuff on it. So Schultz's face, as I said, had been slashed from the corners of her ear and all this sort of stuff, and they call it the Glasgow Smile because many, many years ago there was gangs and that's what it was called. Now the Joker is the same sort of thing, but it actually, right the way back then, when the gangsters, and the big firms, that's what they used to do. When you had lied or you had told something, you had told information to someone that you shouldn't have, you would be given the Glasgow Smile. So then you got to think, what did she say? What could she have done to this person? What was it then that this person gave her the Glasgow Smile? There's a relevance there to that. Cutting up the torso, yes, it's one thing, but doing that to her face, especially when we now look at what a Glasgow smile really represents. You grass somebody up, you've told on someone. What have you done? Again, we don't know, because this person's never been caught. Or this could just be that this is this person's way he wants to kill. There hasn't been many bodies found like this girl since. Not many. So we have to think, what else was she doing? We don't know. I think this killer, because you really got to look at this crime in the crime itself, not in the hitting her over the head and knocking her out and taking her, but in the way the body was left. What's he trying to say? Because it's the way it was left. I mean, she had several cuts on her, for her thighs to her breast, and then entire portions actually sliced away from her. On the lower half of her body was positioned a foot away from the upper part of the body. So what's he trying to say? He's trying to say something in the way that body's being positioned. And then he had tucked neatly away her intestines. Now we have a lot of intestines. I think it's about a mile long, isn't it, something inside our body. So I'm not going to cut someone in half. There'd be a lot hanging out, and don't forget the blood had been drained out of there and stuff. So you're moving our body in two parts, because we know she didn't die there at all. It was placed there. And then he's neatly tucked her intestines underneath her buttocks to make it look like a painting, to make it look like what you're seeing. You're seeing this picture of what this killer wants you to see. He doesn't want you to see the gore. He wants you to come up on this body and look at his work, not be distracted by the intestines out. He's tucked them in. He's made a clean cut. Placed that there, the legs there, and the body here. Positioned it, tidied it, cleaned it, cut her face with the smile on it. Everything this killer did, there is a reason for. And I don't know. Do I think he's killed before? Absolutely. But I think this is his final kill. Or if it's not his final, it's the best kill he's ever going to have. But there must be a reason why he's done it. And the reason's got to be in the way that body was positioned. Why it was there. What he wanted us to see, to think, when we look at that body. He's telling us something about himself there. I can't work it out. I've looked at it, looked at other crimes related to who they think it may be. I don't think there's anyone really that they think it is. I think this is someone that's never ever been caught. Probably dead now. Do I think it was a one-off? No, absolutely not. I think it's a one-off like that. This was his best work. So the autopsy was performed on the 16th of January, I think by Frederick Newbar, Los Angeles County Coroner. Now the autopsy stated that she was 5'5" tall inches, that she weighed about 15 pounds, about 52 kilograms. She had light blue eyes, not green, as many people have stated. Some though, in some lights, your eyes can look green, but she had light blue eyes, very light blue eyes. She had brown hair and she had badly decayed teeth. As I said though, she did have illnesses and stuff as a child, and that could have been that. There were ligature marks to her ankles and her neck, and an irregular, actually, laceration, and superficial. So it's like, not torture, but like using the knife when she was alive to take little bits of chunks out of her. She knew what was coming. Without doubt, this girl knew she was going to die. This girl would have been terrified here. And then I think on her right breast, there was also big chunks took out of it as well. The forearms actually, and there was lacerations on the forearm and upper left arm and lower left side of the chest. And they were probably done while she was alive. The actual cutting in half and everything else was done after she had died. And that was proven because of the bruising on her. But she, yes, was tortured, but not with cigarettes, I don't think. And she was also raped and that. But there was no evidence that she was burnt by cigarettes, as you'll hear some people say, and she didn't eat the faeces. There was no faeces found inside her stomach at all. So they're just things that has been added on over the years. But yes, the girl had a terrible death and was raped. Anally, vaginally, she was raped. The abuse was terrible here. Now in 1930 there was this technique about cutting the body in half, okay, how you can do it. And usually medical performers and, you know, people, medical profession and stuff would have done that. But this technique didn't come out to the 1930s. That means then that this girl's body in 1947 had used the same techniques. So who had learnt that technique? Who could have learnt that technique? So if this came out in the 1930s, this was 17 years after this technique became available of how to cut a body in half like that. Precisely cut a body in half like that, where you'd have to go through everything, the spine and between the second and third, you know, lumbar vertebrae and everything. The person knew what he was doing when he done this to this body. So we know he must have been over 17, because in 1930 this was already 17 years old. Say then he's a doctor, you've trained then as a doctor. This perpetrator is probably between 40 and 50 years old at the time of this murder, without a doubt. This is not a young man's kill here. This is someone who's precise in what they do. He knew what he was doing. This is no way young man. This is an older man's crime. He took his time. The rape and the abuse was one thing. The torture was one thing. It was the cut. It was the final act. Look at my work. Look what I can do. This is an older man. I'd say probably 45, 50. Probably no more. But no way was this a young man's kill. So the lower part, as I said, was moved, and you know, the way it was done, you know, it's weird really, because we have a lot of people that chop up bodies, don't we? We've done cases on here before where people chop up bodies, put them in a suitcase and everything, but not this one. This body was done so precisely and well and set there. You know, this is not someone just chopping this body up to get rid of it. He's chopping this body up for a reason. So I'd love to find out who had done it. I don't think we're ever going to though, are we now really? So I think the coroner said the actual cause of death was determined from the lacerations to the face. So we know she's been hit on the head. Right, that didn't cause any damage, it didn't cause any damage at all to the brain. It may have knocked her out and stunned her a little bit, but that's not what killed her. They're saying in them days, this coroner, it was a slicing of the face, these 3-4 inch deep, you know, lacerations from ear to ear really, up here. This Glasgow Smile. And the blows to the face and head, because she was beat as well at that point. That's what killed her. So the actual cause of death really was knife, attack and beating. The rape and the other stuff didn't kill her. Now, anal cavity had been, I don't know, stretched, would you like to call it, there's other words for it, but by about 1.75 inches, 44 millimetres, suggesting that she had been raped anally. But also could have suggested that objects were used as well, because there was no semen found there either. So he may not have just raped her, but he may have raped her with objects, using other objects, because nothing was found. So the samples were tested and everything was taken, but they came back negative. So I don't know if it was rape, unless he didn't ejaculate. But even then, there would have been still some signs. I think he raped using stuff, tools. I think that's what he did. Okay, so now let's talk about this press. Just how bad they really were. One, they hindered, I think, the investigation of this case from day one by what they put in the papers and everything else, and the mix mash of information that they just wanted everyone to know, because to sensationalise it, to send papers. Now listen, in the 1940s and stuff, this was all you had was newspapers, so you could understand where they was coming from that. Okay, but what I can't understand, and which is absolutely disgraceful behaviour, is where a paper would ring Elizabeth Schultz's mother and tell her mother, not that she has died or she's dead and she's laying there chopped up, you know, the Glasgow Smile, everything else what's happened to this poor girl, but they told the mother to get the exclusive story from her and to bring her to California so they could, you know, really, you know, investigate her and talk to her about this case, get their exclusive case. That she'd won a modelling competition. She'd won this prize, a beauty prize, beauty pageant prize. And they wanted to get the mother there. Now the mother knew something was wrong with this and began to question, and in the end they had to tell her, you know, that Elizabeth had been murdered. Now, I mean, you know, we think the press are bad today, but my gosh, this would just never happen. And then what they did was they said, okay, sorry about that, but the police need to talk to you and the investigators need to talk to you, so we'll fly you out and so you can help them with their investigations. Again, another ruse to get this woman over from Massachusetts to California. They kept her in California, got a load of information out of her, never actually allowed her to speak to the police or anything else, again hindering this investigation. And that's what the press were like in them days. And this is why the press's initial reporting on this case, because you had a reporter there that was before the police was there actually taking photographs and stuff of this poor girl's body, and the press just, I think, got worse from there. But the press did hinder, I think, this investigation and probably stopped the perpetrator from being caught in the end, really, with all this false information. The police didn't know whether they was coming or going. You know, then you have rewards being put out, I think $10,000 reward at that point, you know, for this. Of course, people giving themselves up and bringing up and sending anyone in, you know, because they wanted the 10,000. Overwhelming then for the police, and again hindered this investigation from the beginning. But I also think, do you really think this man would ever be caught? No, because this man knew what he was doing, didn't he? He cleaned the body down. Not like today, when we're talking about the DNA and the forensic evidence we have today and the testing we have today, you could understand it. But what did this perpetrator know? That even in them days, in 1947, to wash the body in gasoline to get rid of the evidence, to get rid of the oil from the fingerprints. What did he know? Who was he? Was he a police officer? We don't know, but he knew something. Do I think they would probably have ever caught this man? No. Whether the police, whether the press hindered it or not, I think this man had no intention of ever being caught, and he was taunting the police, because that's part of the game that he liked to play, was to taunt the police. That's how he was reliving this crime over and over again, because he was taunted. He was taunting them. Catch me if you can, really. And they never did. So there's lots of different reasons why this man wasn't caught. today this man would have been caught. We have the investigation now, don't we? We have CCTV cameras, we have all this stuff now, we have the internet now, we have everything. You know, news spreads so quick about a murder. You know, you can photograph who was there. If you saw someone pull up in a car park or in this land where this body was dumped, you'd photograph it now, wouldn't you? Because you've got your camera on you, you've got your phone on you all the time. It wasn't like that in 1947 at all. And this girl was just an unfortunate girl. Beautiful looking girl, a lovely girl. But she knew a lot of people. She worked in Air Force bases, she worked different places, she worked as a waitress. She associated herself with people that worked as prostitutes and things. It said, not that she was one, but she associated herself with these sort of people because of the area they lived in. A perpetrator, someone like this man, would frequent them places. She may not have even known him. Now, this is how much they sensationalised this case. Now, remember I said that she was wearing the black sheer top and the black skirt? No, she was found naked. So this press, this Examiner and another Hearst newspaper from Los Angeles, Herald Express, and they later sensationalised this case, and they're also the ones that say that they brought in this Black Dahlia case, and that's how they done it, because she was always in black. But also they said that she was this, how can I put it, and they called it an adventurer in them days, who prowled Hollywood, you know, Boulevard. What they're saying was she was sleeping around. That's what they're saying. She was dressed in all in black and this sheer stuff, and she was attracting stuff. That's not true, really. The girl was a waitress, the girl was a working girl, waitress. She'd worked in other places. She just met the person at wrong time, wrong place. And they say that's then they brought up the name of the Black Dahlia. No, they didn't. It was someone before that that did that. They just sensationalised this case. But when you are then saying, and we've had this before with many, you know, I think even with the Sutcliffe, you know, Peter Sutcliffe murders, when you have the press and people saying it's only prostitutes that have been murdered and stuff, which was untrue in that case. In the Yorkshire Ripper case, it was untrue. That they weren't all prostitutes, and he had really done a lot of things before, a lot of crimes before leading up to that, where he'd posed the bodies and killed the bodies of these presumed prostitutes. You are then limiting, aren't you, your, you know, the victim's profile, because you're saying she's one thing and she wasn't that. So then if you're looking, like even in them days in the investigation, you're looking at the lifestyle of this girl. This was totally untrue. Absolutely. And so the public's then perception of her becomes different, doesn't it? She's no longer this actress or you know, portrayal of this, you know, up and coming actress or starlet, as they like to call her, because that was one. When that didn't work, then okay, she's this, you know, adventurous woman that was out prowling the streets of Hollywood looking for men. I mean, it's madness, but it hinders investigations, and it hinders the people that may have had information on this case, or may have thought they had information on this case, then wouldn't come forward because they think, oh, she's a prostitute. Because we still have that today, don't we? Doesn't matter about her. She was just a waitress. So as I said, as the press were doing all this and sending out all this sort of information out to the public, I mean, in them days, that's how it worked. But I think on the 21st of January 1947, so she was murdered on the 15th, by the 21st, a person claiming to have been Elizabeth's killer was on the phone, actually, to James Richardson of the Examiner newspaper. And he congratulated Richardson on the newspaper coverage of that. And he stated he planned on eventually turning himself in, but not before allowing the police to pursue him further. So as again, this game then started to play. Now actually, this could have been the killer. It could have been. So then again, the caller actually then again told Richardson to expect some souvenirs of Elizabeth Schultz or Beth Schultz in the mail. And on the 24th of January, this manila envelope turned up to their office. Now inside this letter, you know, you had the cut out little letters, you know, and they'd done all that. But again, this letter had been wiped with gasoline to protect the fingerprints. There gives you a clear link then between the murder and the murderer and this letter. There is a link, because the same perpetrator now who's writing this stuff, who's ringing up the Times, you know, the Examiner, this man is now saying, I did it, I'm going to send you proof I did it, and I'm going to, which he did, and now all that's been cleaned in gasoline, which wasn't released out. Now also in this envelope, which had been cleaned, this manila envelope that had been cleaned, was Elizabeth Schultz's birth certificate, her business cards, photographs, name written on a piece of paper and an address book, and the name Mark Henson embossed on the cover. Now again, all of these items have been cleaned, all of them. And I think on the same day a package had arrived or had been received, and there was a handbag in it, and there was also a black suede shoe in it, and that had been reported to have been found on the top of this garbage pile in the alleyway, a short distance from where the body had been found. So when we talk about these perpetrators, and we see them more and more now as you're doing profiling, don't you? So we're looking at the murder, we're looking at the body positioning, we're looking at the radius and where she was dumped and stuff, so we know someone. We're looking at the time it would have took to have done this, you know, the rape, if because there was no semen found or anything found, did he use objects instead? You know, was he impotent, could he do it? Did Elizabeth Schultz do something to him? You don't know. You know, the Glasgow Smile, we don't know. There was a lot going on at this time here. I think we can assume that she wasn't an actress. I think that's quite clear, really. She was not an actress at all. And I think she had connections though to Air Force bases, different things, and she had connections to local bars and stuff where she worked as a waitress, and also different, you know, people with different jobs than what you might have seen to what we would have, and so she would then mix in them circles of that. So this case is so wide in who could have done it. It could have been someone she knew. I think everyone they've checked out here has turned up that it wasn't them. It couldn't have been them. Most had alibis and stuff, and you know, alibis are one thing. But I think with this case, this is what the mystery is of the Black Dahlia, is that there is no real suspects. We hear this, you know, this one could have done it, or that one could have done it, the torso kill could have done it, this one could have done it. Listen, anyone could have done it. But I don't know. I think whoever done it was a male, 50, 45, 50, maybe even 55 plus, I'd say probably no more over 50. He had some medical training, without a doubt, or he enjoyed the process of learning about medical training. He knew what he was doing. He wanted you to see something in the way that he laid this body out, where he tucked in the intestines. He's trying to tell you something. And I think if there had been other killings like this, there was like that torso kill, as I said before, but not the same, not in the same class. And I hate to say that about serial killer, but this person who done this was precise, took his time, enjoyed this kill, enjoyed the after effects, and then taunted the police for many, many years after in the press, and has never been caught. So you can read whatever you want on the Dahlia case, because it's all theories, the same as mine's a theory. We don't know what happened to this poor girl. This will remain an unsolved case, and even with all the latest DNA technology and what we can do now, this case has never been solved, because there was nothing really, was there? He wiped the body even then with gasoline. He left no semen, he left nothing. Nothing. So with all the best testing in the world, this case will always remain unsolved. So this has been the Elizabeth Schultz case, the Black Dahlia case. A case with no ending really. Your theories I'd like to hear on who you think may have done it, because there's many, many out there. How old do you think the perpetrator may have been? You know, and when we do this, because this is one of my cases on my membership, as you know, because you're watching it, you're on there. And so this is one of the things, there'll be more discussions on this case as we go through more and more of the research into this, what else we can find out, what other profilers have said about the killer of Elizabeth Schultz. So you know what to do. Thumbs up if you've liked it. I can't say subscribe because you must be subscribed to be on it, but tell others to subscribe anyway. Follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. You will not be able to listen to this on Spotify, on podcast, because it won't be on there. This is just between me and you. So I hope you've enjoyed this case. And until the next time, bye-bye.